get ideas dropped in my brain all the time. I'll be working on people and I'll see glowing, like different parts of their organs or their bodies glowing in my mind's eye. And I can confirm with lab
Wow.
tests or whatever that that's actually the problem for this patient.
A big hello to everyone. Welcome to the Stepping Out series, a podcast all about ordinary people just like you and me who have stepped out into the extraordinary despite the odds. My name is Andre, and I'll be your host today. And my sincere hope is that as you listen today, you'd be both inspired and equipped to step out into the call of God on your life. I have a good friend here, Dr. Jarod Ward. Jared's a phenomenal guy. We've known each other from back in my time in San Francisco, and I'm really actually excited for people to hear your story, Jarod, because I think you are this really cool hybrid in my head between someone who's done ministry school,
Mm-hmm.
but is operating not in ministry, but more in healthcare and you're a chiropractor.
Mm-hmm.
You love the brain. You're all about gut health and hormonal health and all those
Yeah.
stuff. But you've outworked your ministry in a totally different way. So it's really good to have you, Jarod,
Yeah. Thank you so
on the
much for having me. I
podcast.
appreciate it. It's awesome. Good to see you again too. Talk to you.
Yeah, no, it's always been fun chatting with you. So, yeah, let's get straight into it because I'd be so curious. You went to Bethel School of Ministry.
So, my undergrad, I went to a private Christian university where I majored in
Okay.
psychology, and I also did a lot of Bible classes because that's where there. And then Bethel actually has two schools. One is the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry, and one is a discipleship school. I actually went to the
Mm,
discipleship school for 1 year. So, that was the school I went to, and it was an amazing experience. It's basically, I mean, I haven't been to both schools, so I can't say, but we focused on theology, biblical interpretation, kingdom theology, acting in operating in the prophetic, the spiritual gifts, things like that. So it was an awesome experience where I kind of just like lived a year just dabbling in the spiritual and in the kingdom realm, and learned a lot of amazing tools that I think have really helped me be precise and excellent in my career
mm.
and in the rest of my life. So yeah.
How so?
Well, I
How do
mean,
you feel like it's done that?
yeah, just like learning. I think the biggest thing is like learning that God is speaking to us all the time. Like, there were a couple
Mm,
exercises in the school where basically we would have to sit like either the day before or the morning of and ask God, hey, okay, God, what am I going to see today? And then we would write down the first things that popped in our brains, right? And it felt super random. Like it felt almost dumb doing it because I'm like, because
mm,
it just felt like my brain. But then you
mm-hmm.
would go throughout the day and I would see those exact things like throughout my day. And so
Hmm.
just learning that when God says like my sheep hear my voice, he means it, and God is literally talking to us all the time, and we have the mind of Christ, right? So something that may feel like my thought could be God's voice. And so I guess
Mm,
learning what that feels like, that it feels actually so natural, it almost feels like myself sometimes, because God and I are one, right? That divine union. And I'm not saying I'm God, I'm not
mm,
saying that, but just that God's voice should feel familiar to us, and it does.
mm-hmm.
And once you realize that is God's voice, um, basically in my career, for example, I'll be working with a patient and I'll be like, okay, I'm just talking to God all the time. I'm like, okay, God, or okay, Jesus, what supplement does this person need? What intervention does this
Wow.
person need? And I'll get ideas dropped in my brain all the time. And I'll be working on people and I'll see glowing, like different parts of their organs or their bodies glowing in my mind's eye. And I know, and I can confirm with lab
Wow.
tests or whatever that that's actually the problem for this patient. And so God is talking to me in a very similar way at ministry school in my career as well, which gives me divine
Wow.
answers and insight into people's health. And so, and it doesn't happen all the time, no, but it's helpful. And Jesus is a helper. The Holy Spirit is a helper. And why would he not want to help me
Wow.
facilitate and allow this person to heal in front of me? So that's kind of like the biggest, I guess, takeaway I
Wow.
had from my time in at like Bethel, and it's so powerful. It's amazing, and it's not me. Like it's not me. It's just I just listen or I try to listen. I don't always listen, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that's kind of the main thing.
D- was it always Was it always on the cards for you to go for a discipleship school, or
So what do you mean by that?
as in was that something you had like really planned for, or was that something where you kind of stumbled into over the
Oh
years,
yeah, I see what you're
or
saying. So I grew up in a very like ministry focused town, like I don't know how to explain it, community, I guess you could say. And like if you
yeah,
went to ministry school, if you chose to like be in vocational ministry, it was in you were basically serving God more than people who did a quote unquote normal career. And I don't believe that, and I
yeah,
don't think you believe that. But sometimes and maybe they don't even
hmm,
believe that, but that's the impression that I got. And so I kind of always valued, I guess, ministry maybe more than like the average person. But I also didn't, but I also really was passionate about how Paul was a tent maker. Like Paul was a tent maker
yeah,
and it fueled his ministry. Of course he
yeah,
received generous gifts and things like that. And I kind of saw, I'm from the Bible Belt, and I kind of saw a future where potentially pastors would maybe also need to have a profession. And so I saw that,
I love
and
that.
I was like, that's what I want. I was like, I don't want, this is no shame to anyone who does just, live off of other people's generosity or whatever. God provides, God's the provider.
Totally.
But it was just my passion. I was like, God has made us capable of more than we realize in Him, and I want to do
Yeah,
both. Like, if I can excel as a doctor and as a natural healthcare practitioner and also in ministry, why not do both?
yeah,
I don't have to do it all for
yeah,
the rest of
totally.
my life, but if I can do both now, I want to. And so I was always wanting to basically, I guess, strengthen both of those skill sets throughout my life.
Hmm.
And so there's just been different seasons where one is more heavily, I guess, emphasized than the other. But so I guess there's a roundabout answer to your question. Yes and no. I never wanted to be a full-time like vocational minister, but I
Yeah,
did
right.
want to. I believe we all are called to ministry, and I think anyone can benefit from doing that type of schooling. So I wanted it for myself, and yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think there is a whole generation of people, right, who want to follow kind of the tent
Yeah.
making model,
Hmm.
right? Because it's phenomenal. Like, why
Right.
not? Because I always think of it in the way of, right, like people who want to go into ministry full time and, don't want to do a business aspect, like more power
Right.
to them. But I feel like if you do have that drive in you, like, why not? Why wouldn't we then want to
Right.
reallocate funds back into
Right.
church or back into other things we can be doing on the street, like if we have the capability to
Right.
do so. And again, we're blessed, right? We live in North
Right.
America. This is like a huge reality. It's quite simple for us to pull it off, but it's
Hmm.
exciting. I think the future of people from our generation who are like, no, you know what, I'm gonna do have my own business or whatnot, and but I'm still gonna volunteer at my church at a high
Hmm.
capacity and give a lot to it. And it's exciting because it is possible. um yeah, actually, I had a podcast with Rachel Bieber
Oh
before,
yeah.
and she's very similar in that
Yes.
way, right? Hugely entrepreneurial, but has a huge heart for the church,
Yeah.
and so it's exciting seeing that. Um, so how did you then make the transition from what you were doing in your bachelor's to start going more into, like, what drew you towards being a
Yeah.
chiropractitioner? I don't know if that's the
Chiropractor.
correct
Yeah.
word. Yeah.
So when I was, I guess it was really through my own health crisis. So I went on a missions trip with my dad. So my dad is a foot and ankle surgeon. So he's a podiatrist, but he mainly
Okay.
does surgery. And he would
Yeah.
always do medical mission trips where he would go and serve at impoverished disaster sites, basically. And I went on one. I got sick. I was sick for 4 years. I developed about 27 food sensitivities. My digestion
Wow.
was crazy. I was getting dizzy spells. I was passing out at school. And the problem that happened was basically no one knew what was wrong with me. I got blood tests. I did stool tests. I did lots of different things. And I wasn't getting better. It was super painful, I remember. And this was during high school, actually. So not like the most fun time to have anything going on. But
Yeah. Wow.
long story short, I ended up going to this chiropractor who was very holistic. So she worked with a lot of
Hmm.
nutrition, herbs. She even did some emotional work with some of her patients because whether we like it or not, on emotions that we don't let go of will affect our health. And so, anyways, so I was never really attracted to like I'm gonna adjust backs all day or I'm gonna help people with back pain all day. But I found, anyways, she got me better in 3 months, and I had been sick for
Yeah.
4 years,
Oh
and it
wow.
was completely natural, just so precise, like an amazing level of healthcare that was so
Interesting.
individualized and personalized to me. And when I saw what she did, I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. Okay,
Wow.
so that was in high school. I went to college. I did pre med. I was pre med for a while, and then I actually just got kind of a little bit bored, and I kind of started, I guess, kind of on my own, I guess, self exploratory journey. I ended up switching my major to psychology, and I liked it. I was one of those people who like switched his major like 6 times in undergrad. So I was MDiv for a while. I was Bible for a while, counseling, psychology, science, Spanish, whatever, and but anyways, I ended up graduating with a psychology degree, and I then took a year and went to the Bethel school, the discipleship school, and kind of reevaluated. But it was still I still was passionate about natural health, and so I began looking into it again to go back to chiropractic school. And because my whole thing was like, okay, how do I be a holistic doctor? Do I be a medical doctor, a naturopath,
Mm.
or a chiropractor? And chiropractor actually made the most sense when I was looking at the logistics of everything. I can still order blood labs, hormone tests, everything that I want to do. So, anyways, long story short, I applied to a couple schools. I thought I was going to have to go back to undergrad to complete some more science classes, but at the time, one of the best chiropractic schools in the world accepted me, and it was in California in the Bay Area. And so then I went there, Life
Mm.
Chiropractic College West. And so I went there and loved it. It was a phenomenal experience, and that's how we met because I was in the area going to
Yeah.
Hillsong. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's phenomenal. Um, yeah, it's actually really interesting, the fact that you also talking about how you had a whole bunch of interests. And I think that's sometimes the hard
Yeah.
part, right? Like when you're thinking about, okay, what am I gonna what's the I mean, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know the
Right.
answer, and I feel like a lot of maybe someone in their 50s
Uh,
could probably tell both of
I
us.
remember.
But like what is the answer, right? Like but at one point you need to
Right.
double down on one thing, right? So how did was it literally just because you knew you could do you could do the lab tests and you had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff accessible to you that you went down
Well,
that
it was,
route
yeah. So it was
versus
actually agonizing because in college I was just like, oh my gosh, if I pick a major, I'm locking myself into it for the rest of my life, and to me that's like the worst thing that could happen because I'm very just like spontaneous, entrepreneurial, free spirited. But anyways, so what happened was I started working in mental health when I graduated undergrad. I worked at a community mental health center. All my clients, all my caseload were people with schizoaffective disorder. So basically, they're almost
Hmm.
schizophrenic, but not quite. And so those are my clients. And I was working there, and I remember just what I had read about the health of the brain. And I was working at this like group home with all these clients, and they were being fed white bread with pasteurized American cheese. And I knew just by them eating that, it was going to increase the inflammation in their brain and exacerbate the problem that they're already dealing with. And I was just like, I
Hmm.
can't do this. I either have to find a way that gets to the root problem of like mental health disorders and operate in this field, or I have to leave. And honestly, I was making
Wow.
less money than when I was waiting tables, and it was stressful, and I felt
Wow.
like it was just a big. It was a state. It was a government funded program, and I was getting paid a lot to just like flip through people's books for 2 hours, and it just felt really. I felt
Hmm.
like I was a cog in the wheel of a system that was just trying to farm money out of these poor people, and so I was just kind of like,
Wow.
I can't really do this, and so I left and took a break, and I was like, all right, I got to reevaluate because I thought I was going to work in mental health. At first I wanted to be a therapist or a counselor for pastors, church leaders, other counselors because I kind of grew up in some stuff where people needed help and didn't get it, and I was like, okay, maybe I can provide that. But
Yeah.
anyways, I'm kind of rambling, but yeah, I was working in the
No, it's
field,
great.
and I was just kind of like, this. I think I can actually have more of an impact doing it differently, and so that's where I went and got my
Hmm.
doctorate. And Yeah. So, and I really love, like, people come to me all the time and they're like, oh, yeah, I have this uncurable disease, fill in the blank, that I've had for 20 years or 40 years or 10 years, but you're my last resort. And then we get it better. We get it better in like 3 to 6 months.
Wow,
Usually people are completely transformed. And that's the thing. It's like there's so many answers out there
that's so cool.
that people don't realize. And
Mm,
unfortunately, like our Western healthcare system, a lot of times they're just not trained to look for it. It's not their fault, but
mm,
the large pharmaceutical companies write their textbooks and fund their programs, and of course they're going to be the answer, and that's okay. I mean, it's a great business
yeah,
model.
well,
I wish I had it. But so there's just a lot of answers, and it's just beautiful to see
wow,
like people not really even like comparatively like I don't know, people will come to me and if they get on a program for like $200 a month, $300 a month, in 3 to 6 months their condition is resolved, like it's amazing. So
yeah,
um yeah, so it's really
yeah,
really awesome. Like
dude,
one of my motto, I mean, one of the signs that I frequently see that people say in my profession is expect miracles, because it's true, because so many people come in
wow,
defeated. They've been told there's no cure for years, and it's all about like lifting their hopes up and getting progress, and then they're amazed, and then they're sold. So it's really cool. But yeah, so I guess I just wanted to make more impact,
yeah,
and I guess that's kind of what drew me to my career. So mhm.
yeah. Oh, that's I love your
Thank you.
story, man. It's so inspiring, and I think and my favorite thing is because you also
Yeah.
worship as well in San Francisco as well, right? And I know I knew before even having this conversation that I knew that your faith and what you do is
Yeah.
so intertwined. It's just like you could have easily gone into ministry. You could have easily done a whole
Yeah.
bunch of other things, but I know what you're doing is uh, so meshed together. And I also find it super inspiring that even as you're working with patients, like you're talking to the
Hmm.
Holy Spirit and He's helping
Yeah.
you along the
And I
way.
don't know, like, if your listeners like
Um,
get into like prophetic words or anything, but like, the Lord has given me like creative ways to release like hope and prophetic words over patients sometimes when I'm working with them, and
wow,
it's so
that's
fun.
amazing.
And what's
So
weird
cool.
is you see the body respond to the truth and to the hope, and to see the
Hmm.
physical manifestation of the truth of God every day is insane. So it's awesome. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think a big thing I love actually getting to talk to people about is, you feel, I think sometimes there's this conception, right? Like if I want to live out the call of God in my life, what do I need to do? I need to become
Right.
a pastor. But it's actually not
No.
true. Like God gives each of us unique giftings and talents and skills, and there's so many
Hmm.
ways, right, that we can bless people.
Yeah.
Um in the book Start with the Why, I'm
I
not sure if
haven't.
you've read it before. Uh Okay, it's brilliant, but it talks about starting with the why. Like the why you do something is more important than
Hmm.
what you do.
Yeah.
So it goes why, how, and what. And so I'd be really curious to hear what's your why, because I realize for you there's a whole different whats you could have gone through. You could have lived out your why through becoming a therapist. You could have stayed in worship ministry. You could have gone into pastoral ministry. You could have done a whole bunch of other
Hmm.
different things. Um, and it just sounds like the why is so
Yeah.
much more important to
It's
you
true. Yeah.
than the what. So what do you feel like your why is? Like, what's driving you to do
Yeah.
what you
So I
do?
remember, so chiropractic school was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I've gone through some hard things. So it was so brutal. And I remember there, like the first quarter, some of the upperclassmen came in and talked to us and were like, hey, you got to figure out your why. And so I was like, okay, well, I got to figure it out. And so I was thinking
Mm,
about it. And I was just asking God. I was like, okay, God, what is my why? Because I know He knows me better than I know myself. So what's my why?
mm-hmm.
And He was like, your why is to see people healed. And I know it's like, it's so simple. It's almost like, duh,
Wow.
that's not really that profound. Okay, whatever. But it is. It's like to see people healed. And I remember I would sit in class, like, obstetrics or gastroenterology or biochemistry, and I'd be like, okay, I'm getting bored. And then God would just be like, remember your why. Someone is gonna need you to know this someday. And I'm like, okay.
Wow.
And it's true.
Wow.
And
So
because
good.
like I grew up, like a lot of the people in chiropractic are like, oh, I just want to, treat sports injuries or something. So like, why do I need to know about that digestive system? Why do I need to know about hormones or, or toxicology? But I was like in there, I'm like, no, someone's gonna need me to know this someday, because I personally had
So
experienced the
very good.
failure of Western medical system, who let me be sick for 4 years because they didn't know what questions to ask. And I was like, I know I'm going to be the type of doctor that people come to as their last resort, and I'm going to need to know this. And so that's my why.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and even like I think of like the church, it's like spiritual health is emphasized, emotional health is emphasized, mental health is emphasized, but I don't see physical health being emphasized that much. And that is
Yep.
such a key component to advancing the kingdom, because if you live longer and you're spry and you're healthy, you're going to reach more
Come
people.
on.
You're going to be respected by more people. You're going to be able to facilitate more relationships over the depth and breadth of your life. Um, and I see pastors or like leaders like being unhealthy and burning themselves out or whatever. And I do see how like physical health is a portion of our inheritance in the kingdom. And so that's my why. I want to see people
Mm-hmm.
divinely whole, healed, and like the word. You probably know the word sozo. It's like saved in like the physical sense as well. And so I just want to see
Mm-hmm.
everyone's
Yep.
bodies be strong and healthy, because I really think it's so
Yeah.
it's so important. So that's my why.
Hey, I hope you're getting a ton of value from this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, would you like and subscribe? If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, would you rate, review, and share this podcast with your friends? It would mean the world to me, and it helps the word get out. Now back to the show. Yeah, dude, I love that. Yeah, so many incredible things you said, and I love the fact that you were talking about how even when you were in class and some stuff, you were just like, oh, I
Right.
just want to like whatever. And I actually remember a very distinct memory. And in fact, I was teaching at our evening college night school just a couple days ago, and we were going through some reasoning
Mm.
around the resurrection, right? And I'm like, okay, you may not need this logical stuff. It might be a little bit boring,
Right.
but someone might need it. And I have a very distinct memory, even in Australia, talking to one student who was at our Bible college, and he's just like, "Oh, what do I need to like study this stuff? It's so boring. Like like this doesn't bother me." And I said to him, like, you know
Right.
what? But it's gonna bother someone, and we
Right.
need to be
So
ready for
good.
the answers. And it's like it's such a cool thing when you like live beyond yourself, and you're like, "Oh no, I need to learn
Right.
this. Maybe it won't benefit me, but it is gonna actually
Yeah.
benefit
Yeah.
someone else one
Completely.
day." And I also love that even for a lot of what you do today is actually birthed out of
Yeah.
pain. You know what I mean? Like, and how God just uses tough things and challenges in our lives, and now it's kind of in a lot of ways it ends up being like a springboard of what you feel
Hmm.
passionate about. Like, for me, it's I felt like I was when I like my church growing up, like it was great. Um, there just wasn't a lot of space for
Hmm.
the youth, for example. And when I got to Hillsong Church in Sydney, and I was like, oh, I didn't know you could have fun in church. I didn't know you could enjoy yourself and really look forward to being part of it. And I felt a bit robbed, to be
Hmm.
honest, in my teenage years. And I wish someone would have told me that Jesus loves me with all his heart. I wish someone told me that there's joy in the kingdom, and there's you
Right.
can enjoy it. You can have such a great time. And so for me, out of that hurt, I feel the pull towards making sure that we're doing whatever we can to express Jesus well and authentically and show all of who he is. Uh, and so it is just fascinating always thinking about how God
Hmm.
uses
Yeah.
challenges in our lives and stuff. It's kind of like, I don't want this to ever happen to someone else, so
Right.
I'm going to be part of the solution. Versus I went through this, okay, I'm just going to live my life
Right.
small because
Right.
poor me, poor this, poor that. It's kind of it's having a victor mentality versus a
Exactly.
victim mentality, right? In the midst of all of it. Um yeah, that's really cool. I've actually been thinking a lot about
Awesome.
physical health for a while. And not that I'm the most fittest guy by any means, but I feel like I have over the last couple of years. I've just very slowly, I've made the decision in my heart, my mind that what I'm doing is not going to be like a
Hmm.
1 month diet thing. I'm going slower and trying to create
Good.
lifelong habits because I'm like, it's
Yeah.
like the book Atomic Habits, right? By James Clear. I'm like, I'm committed to the long run and I'm patient and I know my eating habits aren't going to change overnight, but I'm slowly changing things here and there. And I felt like what changed the game for me is, a lot of times you hear about working out for,
Right.
the way you look. But for me, it literally was what you were talking about. It's good health because
Yeah.
I have the call of
Yeah.
God in my life, and I want to still be
Right. And I
doing
want to
this when I'm in
steward
my
it well.
90s,
Yeah.
and that's literally correct. And for me, like in order to lead
Right.
well, I need mental clarity. In order to, even very practically, I talked to some of our team here at church. If we're going to be loading in and we're a portable church, right?
Right.
It's gonna include
Right.
us moving cases around, right? So we need to take care of our bodies so we don't get
Yep.
injured along the way, right? I want to be doing this for the long run, so that's why. Not again, I'm not perfect, but I am slowly trying to put uh, different things in place. So, in saying all of that, and given the fact that the church and Christians for a long
Hmm.
time have ignored physical health, and unfortunately, there's a lot of from the last century, a lot of
Hmm.
overweight Pentecostal preachers, uh, which is it's just fascinating, right? But okay, so for
Hmm.
for the believers, right? Like, how do you? Why do you think a Christian should take care of their physical
I
health?
Yeah, so I mean, I
Like, why
guess
is it
to me, it's like
important?
an act of obedience, and it's really all about the word that always comes to my mind is just stewardship. We're called to steward what God gives us. Like whether that means our finances, the people in our lives, but our physical bodies. And like my body is a gift, my mind is a gift, and so I want to just like the parable of the talents, right? With they invested what God had given them
Mm,
to produce more, and so um, that's really where, to me, I think that it's a kingdom principle that I think is applied to the physical realm as well. And also, like
mm,
you reap what you sow. I remember I heard a story, a sermon from a preacher one time, and how she felt she was more energetic than her interns that were like 25, and she was like in 45 or 50, I can't remember. And it's because she had
that's crazy,
focused
hey?
on, I sow energy by exercising, and therefore I reap energy. And I sow health and energy and vitality by my choices, my dietary choices, or whatever, and therefore I reap. And so I just think sowing and
Mm,
reaping, stewardship, it's all intertwined, and it's a supernatural spiritual law that we cannot escape. And so I think we should cooperate with it
mm,
for our best interest, really. So,
yeah. Have you heard of
oh, what?
the
Sorry.
2080 rule before? The
Yes.
2080 rule. So
Hmm.
for health
Hmm.
and people taking care of their health, very practically, what do you think is the 20% of the most important things that people can do that would give? Like, if you can just do these three things, you're gonna get
Hmm.
80. You may not get all the way there, but you're getting 80% of the results. What do you feel like are
Yeah.
your
I
top
guess I would
ones?
I would figure out a way to. The first one is figure out a way to be metabolically healthy. Okay, it sounds weird, but basically, most of the Western world is fast tracked to diabetes. And when you're fast tracked to diabetes, your bones fall apart, your joints fall apart, your mind falls apart, and you get sick. You're inflamed, you're in pain. Okay, so I would just find a way to be metabolically healthy, whether that means you intermittent fast, whether that means you eat more protein, less carbs, whatever way works for you best in your life. We need like our culture and the industrialized agriculture system does not support health. And so you need to find a way that is comfortably countercultural that helps slow that down. So that's the first thing. Um,
What are some
yeah, so like
practical
intermittent
ways
fasting.
to do
So I
that?
don't know if you've heard of that, but you probably have. But basically, like it's a
Yeah, I
16
have.
8 eating window. So you fast for 16 hours and you can eat pretty much whatever you want within 8 hours, within the 8 hours. Do I recommend eating whatever you want? No, but that's a good start. And the reason why is because the fasting basically forces your body to be more sensitive to sugar and insulin. So it stops insulin resistance, aka it stops diabetes, the progression of diabetes. So that's one way. I typically don't. I
Hmm.
mean, I've been working on my health for years. Like there was one time for 4 years I didn't eat grains, like any grains. So I'm used to being pretty disciplined, and I don't necessarily expect everyone to like be right where I am now, you know. But I focus mainly on protein, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates for my diet. But anyways, I'm kind of rambling. So intermittent fasting, I think, is a great way to do that. If you don't want to intermittent fast, start breakfast with protein. That's like the best thing. A lot of times people start breakfast with like bread or
Love
cereal,
that.
and that actually spikes blood sugar right away in the morning, which is not what you want, and then you'll crash. Okay. So I would say start with protein and fat, like eggs, whatever, some type of protein. So that's a really good way to just sustain yourself and create a solid foundation for the rest of your day. And then people don't get enough sleep. So that would be my second thing. Sleep is just so restorative. It's healing. It helps the immune system. When you're sleeping, your body repairs itself. And we just don't get enough sleep. We're staring at our phones till midnight or whatever. And that's just it. That's gonna, and it sounds
Hmm.
so simple, but a lot of people don't have these simple things in check. And so they're just brewing disease and discomfort.
Yeah.
So those are the first two. Um, and then most of the time, I would say everyone is chronically dehydrated. I think so. Have you ever had like, I don't know if you drink caffeine every day, but if you go without caffeine and you get a headache, to me, that's actually not a sign of necessarily of
Yeah.
caffeine withdrawal, but a sign of chronic dehydration. Because caffeine makes you feel like you're
Oh wow.
hydrated because it shoots blood toward the brain more. But then when you don't take it, you realize how dehydrated you are and you get a painful headache. So most people I think are actually pretty dehydrated, and I recommend people not just drinking water, but making sure they get some healthy salts in because salt and water go together. And so if you're just drinking like a really, really clean water, like too pure, it'll actually pull minerals out of the body because it wants to be balanced with salt and minerals. So you have to kind of
Wow.
remineralize your water sometimes to actually be truly hydrated. Because sometimes people drink and the water just like goes right through them, you
Just
know? That's a sign you're not actually hydrating. And so then I would add you can even add just like a little bit of pink Himalayan salt or like red sea salt to your water. You don't have, it doesn't have to taste like salt water, but just to provide a little bit of minerals so that your body retains the water some more.
but you could also just use
I don't
salt
recommend
as
table
well.
salt because it's only like sodium chloride. So I would recommend like a mineral based salt like the Himalayan or the Redmond because it has more of the
Okay.
beneficial stuff. So those are the three things. Find a way to be metabolically healthy, whether that's you eat more protein, less carbs, or you intermittent fast. Make sure your sleep hygiene is really good, and then hydrate with electrolytes as well. So, mhm.
Yeah. And when you do the
Mhm.
intermittent fast, so you're saying you don't eat for 16 hours. So what does that
So it
look
depends
like
on who
during
you are and
a
what
daily
works with your life.
schedule?
Some people eat breakfast and then don't eat dinner. Some people don't eat breakfast at all. They have maybe black coffee or water or tea without cream, because those all don't break your fast. And then maybe they might eat at noon or 1, and then eat dinner again at 6 or 7, and then be done. So it usually comes into like a 2 meal a day type of thing. And I've worked with a lot of people who have fixed a lot of their health issues just by doing that alone. It's pretty cool, especially with like weight loss and hormonal regulation and things
Mm,
like that. Because when the body fasts for a certain amount of time, the body begins to try to think of ways to be more efficient to get what it needs. So then it actually goes around your own body and finds the cells and tissues that maybe aren't working as well as the other ones, and it recycles them. So it actually is a way of basically kind of, it's called autophagy, but it's basically a way of the body kind of recycling and repairing itself
interesting.
because it doesn't have the easy, steady flow of constant food intake. So it's a way to stimulate repair of the body just by fasting.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's
Huh.
free.
Interesting.
Yeah. Mhm.
No, that's really awesome. And then on the other hand, right? Like these are really good practices. What do you feel like if you feel like there's one
Mhm.
deadliest killer that you're just like, all right, if you can just, because I mean, a car has both, it feels like we're saying, okay, these are the accelerator,
Right.
but you also got to take your foot off the brake as well. So what do you feel like would be like the
Yeah.
biggest killer
I would
that if you're like,
say
all
it
right, if you
is
can
a
stop this
dysregulated nervous
one thing,
system.
you can go far.
Okay, which sounds complicated, but basically, if you, we have two phases of
It
our
does.
nervous system that we can't really control. We're either in rest and digest, which is called parasympathetic. I don't know if you know these words, and or sympathetic, which is fight or flight. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
running from a tiger, I'm gonna die, kind of feeling. And most of the time in the Western world, with work,
Mm.
life, running around, we get stuck. Our brain gets stuck in sympathetic. And when we're in sympathetic, the brain is just trying to survive. It's not trying to improve, rest, heal, or properly digest nutrients. And so that's why I would say it doesn't matter what food you eat, how much sleep you get, or like, what exercise you do. If you're stuck in the stressed out, I'm never going to even put any of this good stuff to use phase of the nervous system. And there's a lot of ways to help unstick that.
Wow.
Chiropractic is one way. Acupuncture is another way. Meditation, prayer is another way that can help. Um, but I would say just finding a nervous system minded, like a nervous system modulator to help you unstick yourself to get you to the rest
Mm.
and digest. Um, so I think that's because that's like the highest. I think that's one of the
Mm.
highest tiers of healthcare
Interesting.
is someone who can switch the nervous system because we're literally like flipping a switch from stressed out
Mm.
to okay, now my healing activation mode is on and I can actually use the tools that I'm giving myself. So yeah, there's only two
Is
modes
it
of the
really
nervous
that
system. There's
binary
sympathetic
between
and
the two?
parasympathetic. Yep.
Wow.
That's called the autonomic nervous system, and there's two
Wow.
divisions. Yep.
Wow. I mean, and I mean, if let me know if I'm interpreting this right, but like in layman's term, it's kind of
Yeah.
just getting to a place of rest, right? Like it's like real true
Yes.
rest where it's kind of,
Yeah.
you're still, you're there, and that's when your body can
Yes.
actually do its repair
It
work,
can be,
which is
but you can
sleep
be sleeping, and
in a
also it
lot
can
of
be
ways, right?
fitful. So it's a state. It's I don't want to say it's like a state of mind, but it kind of is.
Mm.
It's because you can be resting, relaxing, lounging, hanging out with friends, but the nervous system can still be dysregulated and in the sympathetic state. So yeah, it's pretty wild. hmm
Fascinating. Wow, fascinating. Yeah, I've been reading the book by
hmm
John Mark Comer, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Good.
It's been really good, right? And one practice that I've been putting a lot into my life is just silence and
Right.
solitude. And of course, it looks
Right.
different for each day, right? Depending on how much time we have. But it's actually still shocking
Right.
that even when I
Right. Right.
don't
Right.
have a lot of time, I do have 10 minutes. And just 10 minutes, I put a timer
Yeah,
on,
it's good.
and I just go quiet in front of God. And and like just what that does for slowing down, at least for me, it just like just like really calms everything down. And you're
Yeah.
like, all right,
Perfect.
I'm here, God.
Yeah.
You're here. We have nowhere to go. It's just me and you.
hmm
We can have these 10 minutes.
hmm
Like the world's not going to fall apart if I take these 10 minutes. Um, and it's pretty incredible. Hey, like even now that we're tying everything back
hmm
to scripture in a lot of ways, right? All the way from science to scripture, like God's heart for us to have rest and have Sabbath, and like it's actually so
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
for us. And yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. Hey, how like we actually can't do what we're called to do well
Right.
without
Right.
getting to that place of rest. And I think one thing John Mark Comer said in his book, which was really fascinating, it's also it's almost actually a form of pride for us
hmm
in saying like, oh, I'm limitless, like I have limitless energy, I can do
Right.
everything. It's actually a form of humility saying that
Yeah.
God actually made us finite, and we actually
Right.
acknowledge restraints, which I don't think we want to do, with modernity and like where we're going now, like effectiveness and efficiency. You can always be more productive, you can always be more efficient, you can always, like you can always fine tune your life to maximum productivity. But there is a sense of acknowledging, what, like, Lord, like I'm actually at my limits, and I'm gonna go
Yeah.
to bed tonight, and I'm gonna trust you to take care of everything else. And that's what makes me human. uh yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, just
Perfect.
what you were saying to
Feeling.
do with rest. Yeah, that's
hmm
fascinating that it's that binary. um yeah, man. That's all I got for you. Have you got anything else? What else would you want to say to believers who may not have taken their, or who haven't taken their physical
I
health
would say that you're
seriously?
just missing out. It's kind of an adventure. It's fun. I think a lot of times too people avoid it because of like shame or things like that, and I think there's a lot of we are interconnected. Like God made us that way. Our spirits, our souls, our minds, our bodies. And if we when we choose to neglect a part of us, it does have a negative impact on the rest of us. And so I think just part of being fully alive in God
Mm,
is appropriately involving ourselves with Him in each one of those dimensions. And I think your life will only expand and get for the better, and there's things to
mm,
work through. And my patients and even myself, as I've worked through physical things, it can also be emotional, it can be spiritual. And so I think it's part of the adventure. And um, while it might be tempting to shy away or compartmentalize our lives, God doesn't work like that, and He's never worked like that. So we should face the truth.
If you're looking for more stories that'll inspire you to step out into the call of God in your life, why don't you check out this podcast right here?